Hi guys, Jackknife'd here. A few days ago I finished the Elder Scrolls IV Morrowind, and I've decided that it's one of my favourite games of all time. There are a few games that truly capture my interest like Morrowind. Its world is so unique that I found myself dedicating entire days to just playing through the game, exploring, looting dungeons, doing side quests. I don't do that with many other games. So of course I picked up Oblivion, planning to finish that and then eventually move on to Skyrim. I wasn't too interested in the previous games. To me, any Elder Scrolls game pre-Morrowind is the equivalent of gouging out one of your eyes, replacing it with a D20 dice, and then trying to play the original System Shock without mouse look. At the time of writing, I've got 11 hours on Oblivion, and these are my thoughts so far. Maybe the game gets better, maybe it gets worse. I'm not sure. The first thing I'll do is say what I do like about the game. The physics system is mostly an improvement to Morrowind, which didn't really have a physics system to begin with. In Oblivion, enemy corpses can go flying when you hit them, objects can be knocked about in the game world, and even picked up using a Fallout-like manipulation system. The traps and dungeons are interesting, as they can have morning stars swing from the ceiling and tripwires that you have to avoid. It's a nice change from the traps in Morrowind dungeons, which are basically the equivalent of the heated doorknob in Home Alone. Doors and chests could be trapped, which means that you'd be burnt, electrified, or paralysed by opening them, but you could also disarm them using probes. The game also looks a lot better on a technical level, obviously. I mean, except characters, but I'll get to that in a bit. Movement is also done far better than in Morrowind. For those who don't know, when you run and jump in Morrowind, it depletes your fatigue, and your fatigue level decides whether you hit attacks, cast magic, pick locks, persuade NPCs, barter efficiently. Basically everything in that game is decided by how full that green bar is, and the default speed in Morrowind is awful, so you'll be running around a lot, and when you come up against a cliff racer, Kaguti, or giant rat, you won't be able to hit them, because you have no stamina. Meanwhile in Oblivion, running doesn't deplete fatigue, jumping and attacking does though, but beyond that you can move around as quickly as you want without getting exhausted. It's a nice touch, and I also like the horses. They make for a good way to get around the map, but they're kind of made redundant by another feature that I'll get to in a minute. Okay, we're done with things that I think were a definite improvement over Morrowind. Now we'll start by pointing out things that just seem strange or unnecessary. Firstly, the inventory. It's just frustrating in a way that I just can't describe. For reference, this is Morrowind's inventory. Yeah, it looks scary, but it's actually fine. You've got your items, magic spells, list of attributes and map, all visible from a single screen. And you can remove those windows around, resize them, even minimize them if you don't want to look at them. Meanwhile, Oblivion has everything jam-packed into a series of menus. Let's say that I want to check my current objective. In Morrowind, that was a separate menu, the journal, which we're working with J. It has a chronological list of everything you've done, and you can even search events, quests, and conversation topics alphabetically if you want to see what a certain person said about something. It's quite advanced, really. Then in Oblivion, I press tab to open the inventory, go to the map menu, and then select the current quest menu. Speaking of the map, it's a step up and a step down. Morrowind's map was like this. More would be filled out when you explored it, and areas of interest like towns were marked. You could swap between close view and distant view, which were both useful in their own right. Oblivion's, to its credit, actually looks like an old map, but for some reason it doesn't zoom out all the way. No, you've got to awkwardly drag your mouse all around to see everything. It sucks and makes navigation difficult. Not that you need to navigate because you have a quest marker. I hate quest markers. Yeah, I know. But it completely shuts off the navigational part of your brain. In Morrowind, a quest would be delivered something like this.
To find the tomb, you must go east until you reach the Dunmer stronghold Ashenbits upon the Zinadums, and then go south until you find a big rock. The entrance is at the top of the big rock, so remember to pack some rising force potions.
The NPCs actually told you where to go, and you'd probably need to check your journal if you got lost. All you've got is a microscopic minimap which tells you which cardinal direction you're facing, and you have no quest marker whatsoever. Meanwhile in Oblivion, they deliver a quest like, you must find the tomb, and then you get a convenient quest marker directed to it. We'll talk more about dungeoneering later. Not only does the quest marker ruin exploration, but it's paired with another feature that makes it even worse. Fast travel. From anywhere in the game world, you can just teleport to any town you visited, and any city. Yep, you can go to any city as soon as the game starts, so the mystique and drive to explore that Morrowind has is completely absent. Man, fast travel and quest markers, it's like a satire of bad AAA mechanics. All I need now is small micro treads. Let's just talk about some NPCs some more. As much as everyone memes about them having pointless conversations, the system is actually quite advanced for the time, and very ambitious. Some shops will be closed because the shopkeeper's asleep, or people won't sell you goods until a certain time of day. They can even go to the local temple to pray, or go on long trips to other cities. I hear there's this one skooma consumer who goes from the Imperial City to Bravil for skooma, but the trip is so dangerous that he always dies on the way. That's pretty funny, but even funnier are the character faces. I mean, god, they look like products of industrial scale incest. But also, you can't tell what race they are half the time. Is this guy an Altmer, or an Imperial with a spray tan? How about this guy? Redguard? Imperial? Breton? How about this one? Not to mention the Khajiits look like they all swallowed a beehive. The Argonians are all bug-eyed. In Morrowind, every NPC used a random combination of face and hair presets, and then they had unique clothes to differentiate them. You could tell who was who most of the time from a passing glance, even in the big cities and towns. Meanwhile in Oblivion, everyone blends together into this warping blob of odd-shaped eyes, high cheekbones and orange skin. While I'm still talking about NPCs, the persuasion system in this game is weird and I don't really think they ever explain it fully. I had to trawl through old Reddit posts to even get an idea of how it worked. So you can collect these wedges, which represent a different action like telling a joke or bragging, and I think you want the big wedges to be at the top. The NPC will smile or frown when you hover over one, and you can only click them once, but then you can also rotate it without clicking and bribe them? But that's a different menu? I don't know. They also remove the taunt feature, so you can't goad someone into attacking you anymore. And I guess if I'm talking about the problems with persuasion, I should talk about the other minigame. You would not fucking believe how much I hate lockpicking in Oblivion. I don't usually rage at games, but this goddamn Cenobite circle jerk for security check has made me turn the game off on multiple occasions. Basically, you have to move the lockpick and swing it upwards with the mouse, which is about as responsive as cutting all the tendons in your arms then trying to fish for tuna. You have to push these pins up, but not in any order. No, you have to wrangle the lockpick until you find one pin that falls slightly lower than the others, which you then push up and click to set it, but do it too soon or too late and the pick breaks, and you've got to try again with another. And when the pick breaks, every single pin that you've set falls back down, so I hope you memorise the order because you've got to do it again, and if you fail, you've got to start again. Morrowind's lockpicking was simple. You just go to the locked door and hold down left click until it opens, and sometimes the lock is too complex, which causes you to cash out on better lockpicks or use a spell to unlock it. Meanwhile in Oblivion, oh no, you didn't have enough magic knowledge to use this spell. Better do the fucking lockpicking minigame again. I'd rather lockpick my fucking break inside. I've had to get surgery to remove it, and okay, that was probably too far. I'm going to cut that bit, never mind. Okay, the map. Cyrodiil is an interesting place. It kind of looks like Europe, which I guess is standard for fantasy, but it doesn't mean it's still not majestic. I like how the Imperial City can be seen from anywhere with its massive tower. It really gives the impression that this is the centre of the Empire. It's definitely better than Vivek City. For those of you who haven't been to Vivek, just imagine an Aztec city with all the canals and stuff, but every building is a termite mound, and it's guarded by like Spartans. Anyway, while Cyrodiil is the biggest area in Tamriel, it feels very small compared to Vvardenfell. The fact that you can see everything from everywhere ruins the illusion of scale that Morrowind had, where everything was covered in fog and ash. People don't like the distance of fucking Morrowind, but I think it works for this place. There's like got an active volcano in its centre, and misty lagoons everywhere along the coast. When you use a mod to change the view distance, you realise how close all the towns are, and that's the reason I don't use anything like OpenMW. Beyond the size problem, the dungeon areas of Oblivion seem like a letdown. You have 3 different types from what I've found: Fortress Ruins, Aelid Shrines, and Oblivion Gates. Fortress Ruins are the most common, and they have bandits inside of them most of the time. I'm kind of perplexed by them though. Half the time they're just sitting along the roads. Why are they abandoned? The Empire could just send some guys in to clear the bandits, rebuild the exterior, and then use them as toll gates or something. It's not something the average player probably thinks about, but I'm coming from Morrowind, where the choice of dungeons was very specific. You have ancestor tombs, which aren't disturbed due to Dunmer cultural lore, Daedric shrines, which are only populated by monsters and crazy cultists, Dwemer strongholds, which are usually inhabited by robots or treasure hunters, and Dunmer strongholds, which are usually inhabited by Sixth House cultists. These places have reasons for being mostly uninhabited. Meanwhile in Oblivion, once you pass your 5th ruined fortress on the start of the road, you start to question why no one's fixed them up. Next to Aelid shrines. They have some interesting architecture and use a lot of marble, which gives them an ancient Greek catacomb vibe. They're mostly inhabited by goblins or imps, not too difficult but also not too interesting either. I think they were built by the ancient Alma, that's kind of cool. Anyway, now we have Oblivion Gates. As part of the Oblivion Crisis, they're opening up across the realm and it's your job to go and close them. They're surrounded by the most annoying type of enemy in the game, scamps, and when you go to the plane of Oblivion, you fight even more scamps. In Morrowind, scamps were just stupid little gremlin things which run up to you or buy your skooma sometimes, but now they throw fireballs. Constantly, and even with the new blocking feature, they're nearly impossible to dodge. I'll talk about the combat a little bit later. Oblivion is an interesting place. It's where I'd expect Khorne to live in Warhammer 40k. Blood, skulls, lava, bones. Unfortunately, I have to play through it. In an Oblivion gate, you have to go in, reach some sort of sigil tower, and then shut it off to close the gate. So you go through these areas with edgy names like Altar of Pain and Hall of Burning Blood, fighting scamps in Dremora, endless rooms filled with the bastards, until you reach the sigil tower and deactivate it. I find there's absolutely no reason to go to Oblivion, and I avoid them whenever I can. Back to the main map of Cyrodiil. Like I said before, it's pretty generic. Some people have said that the different cities are based on different European cultures, but it all looks the same to me. I mean, what? Bruma looks like Skyrim, Bravil looks flammable, Kvatch looks really flammable, Chorrol was forgettable, and the Imperial City looks like Gondor. That reminds me, let me regale you with a tale of Jungle Oblivion. Originally, Cyrodiil was going to be a massive jungle with rice farms to feed the legions of the Empire. That sounds cool as shit, right? But then Todd Howard watched Lord of the Rings and decided he wanted Cyrodiil to look like Middle Earth. fine, I guess, but the Elder Scrolls fans had convinced themselves that the original pitch would never work. Like, no, Jungle Oblivion would have been terrible. No successful empire has ever been started in a jungle. I believe that Todd can come up with some unique and interesting ideas. It's just that previously he had some help. Morrowind's weird aesthetic was largely the product of Michael Kirkbride, who is some sort of primordial archon kept in check by the power of Todd, also known as the Toddhead. He is the great slumbering deity whose dreams create the entire Elder Scrolls series, and whose awakening shall doom us to the void. See, this analogy is ironic because Kirkbride came up with the Godhead anyway. Before Kirkbride was part of the Bethesda team, the previous Elder Scrolls games were very derivative D&D-esque fantasy. Then Kirkbride came in and added more sci-fi elements, which is why in Morrowind we have sand people, Tatooine house designs, droids, and also the crazy cosmic stuff like Chim and Dwemer's Zero Sum. He left in 2000, and after Morrowind was finished using his ideas in 2002, things slipped into the more generic style of fantasy that the Elder Scrolls was more known for beforehand. Don't worry, I'm not going to be one of those die-hard Morrowind fans who thinks that Kirkbride is the sole reason for that game's success, but it's pretty clear that Todd's ideas just aren't as interesting. Now we come to combat. I'll make this quick, it's bad. In Morrowind, your proficiency in a weapon skill decided your chance of hitting an enemy. If your character is good with a spear, and you try and use a hammer, you're not going to hit the enemy. Meanwhile in Oblivion, I have no clue how it works, but I assume it affects damage this time. It doesn't change the fact that I have to hit an enemy hundreds of times in order to kill it. I'll use a Morrowind analogy here. An early game enemy is a Qualma Forager, this big leech thing. They're everywhere, and if I have a basic iron longsword, it might take 4 or 5 hits to kill it, minus the time that I miss. We'll assume that this is early on in the game and I hadn't really leveled my longblade stat much. Now in Oblivion, we use the wolf as an example. I'll run up to it with my Akaviri Daikatana and hit him 10 times, including a few charge attacks, and he finally dies. Now what if I'm up against a scamp? I'll probably have to hit it like 20 times with some arrows, and all the while I'll be shoulder bashing me and slinging fireballs that I can't dodge and can't block either. It doesn't feel like weight combat, it feels like trying to cut a steak with a spoon. Then there are just things that have been changed for no good reason. Pauldrons and bracers no longer separate armor pieces, so you can't make interesting combinations of armor sets that go half naked like a gladiator. Long blade and short blade are now just blade, and spear is completely gone. Why would you do that? What do you gain from taking shit out of a sequel? Who on the Bethesda team thought this wasn't even a necessary change? Who plays a sequel to a game and says, oh boy, I hope they remove features for no reason? This shit should have never been made standard practice in games. Right now my character is a basic red guard swordsman because I wanted something basic to start off with. I've mostly gone to mages guilds and fencing off their expensive alchemy equipment so I can buy some healing spells. Unfortunately I don't even have the magic skill to cast them, even if I did have them. So I thought to myself, well, conjuration levels intelligence, right? So I got myself a bound dagger spell. I stood in the town square, continuously casting the bound dagger, resting 1 hour each time I ran out of magicka, and slowly leveling conjuration. This is also if I can just use a healing spell that isn't as used to the shit I started out with. In Morrowind, you hop off the boat, go to Arrow's place, pick up the heart heal spell, and you're good. There's very few times that you actually have to grind like that in Morrowind. Not to mention the busted leveling system Oblivion has. I haven't played long enough to see the effects of it, but I've heard some nasty rumours. Essentially, instead of you getting more powerful, the world scales with you each time you level up. You're stronger, but so are the enemies. So why even level up? What compels someone to make this in the game? Whose fault was this? Was it Todd? Do you realise how badly you have to fuck up in your fantasy RPG to make the player not want to get more powerful? Your game world is bland, your characters are eyesores, your combat is boring, your inventory is confusing, your minigames are infuriating, your dungeons are repetitive, your cities are derivative, your objectives are mind-numbing, and it all comes together to be so unbelievably, insurmountably worse than Morrowind that it makes me question how in God's name Bethesda didn't go bankrupt. Seriously, did people not play this and realise something was wrong? Were they so blown away by the graphic they didn't question the actual core of the game? Were people's standards so low in the 2000s that they'd eat up anything as long as it had a big name attached to it? I've heard it said that the Oblivion community is almost entirely people who play the game as kids and can't let the damn thing die. What the game needs is someone who isn't chained by nostalgia goggles to give an autopsy and produce an outside opinion on it. It needs me, essentially. I don't care how a game looks usually, but I do care how it plays, and Oblivion plays bad. It's the black sheep of the modern Elder Scrolls games, not as unique as Morrowind or as accessible as Skyrim, drowned in Bethesda jank and the ruins of over-ambition. Its only legacy in pop culture is the Imperial Guard dialogue and the NPC conversation so infamously bad that even people who've never touched an Elder Scrolls game know about it. Even before I planned to make a video on Oblivion, I could tell something was off, and it impacted the game feel. I'll probably just play some more of it just to get my money's worth, but it really just can't compete to Morrowind.